Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another She Myth Eliminator story. This morning, I am blessed to have the amazing Angela Scott with me, and doesn't she just look like the epitome She Myth ambassador? Awesome hair, amazing background, always, ready to go is our Ange. And I've asked Angela to be on the show with me today because of she has made some significant inroads into the building industry here in Australia. So she's based in Australia. Well, I won't give away too much of her story. I'm going to get her to share it. But what I will say is that for a woman in a man's world, she is doing an amazing job. Multi-award winning custom home builder. She is on the cover of all sorts of things when she's won all these different awards for her amazing designs that her and her husband do with their company called Bungalow Homes, based in Hervey Bay here in Australia. So welcome to the show, Angela.
Thank you, Tracy, and what a wonderful introduction. And I'm a humble person, so I don't really speak much about all the awards that we've won. But since we are, I've had 30, I think now totaling about 32 awards that we've won for our homes over the last 10 years. Been the Australian finalist for the Best Business Partner through the Housing Industry of Australia, and have won Women in Building as well back a couple of years ago. So it's been a long road to getting into the industry. And if you want, I can give you a bit of, a background of how I got to where I am. So
tell us all about that.
So I actually started where I think maybe you started originally in the banking industry. So when I was actually young, my father was the director of a big building company, and they did all the fit out in Parliament House in Canberra, the High Court, the refurbishment of the Queen Victoria building in Sydney. So I was always on building sites, and I'd be walking around, especially the Queen Victoria building was amazing. The detail, they did all the detailed joinery work. So just to refurbish that to it's what the glory it is now. And Dad sort of said to me, I said, I wanted to be an architect. And he said, no, you'll end up sitting in a drafting office. You'll be, working for someone. You'll only be earning $30,000 a year. So I thought, okay, I won't get the marks I needed for the university, which I knew. So I thought, I'll just go and work. And I went into the banking industry, worked there for 5 years, learn a lot about obviously money and that sort of things, which always comes in handy for businesses, and accounting and reconciling, all that sort of stuff. So that was good background to base myself from, but decided that I wasn't happy in that industry. So I went on a little journey up the east coast of Australia, jumped on a bus and backpacked my way up to the Whitsundays, and sort of tried to find, I guess, what I wanted to do or what was coming next. And I decided I would go to university and I'd be a marine scientist. So I actually came back and went to university and did marine science. And within that time, I met my now husband, and he was an engineer. And we sort of started doing a little bit of developing duplexes around the Sydney suburbs. And I was like, I really am enjoying this building thing. This is what I sort of wanted to do. So I decided we bought a development in Hervey Bay, which is now where I live. And we moved from Sydney to Hervey Bay because that's where the whales are. So it's the whale capital of the world. So I thought, I could probably get work, in the marine area. But got up here and started designing houses myself. Jumped on the computer, watched videos, YouTube, everything you can YouTube these days, and basically started designing houses. And we decided we would start our own building company to build custom homes. And the very first home that we designed and we built for our first client, we said to them, can we put your home in the building awards? Which I, didn't think that we would ever possibly win, but we actually did win that year, the award. That was the first award that we won. And I remember ringing my dad and sort of saying to him, Dad, we won. And he's like, you won? And I'm like, yeah, we won. And I could hear in his voice how proud he was at the time that we actually had won, because it had taken me that many years to get, I guess, to the point where I wanted to be when I left school. But he sort of convinced me, no, that's not what you should be doing. And I guess that's a lot about the she myth, that everyone's got ideas of how you should live your life or what you should be doing. And obviously the building industry was not ideal for women. You know, when I used to walk around the building sites with Dad, I was fairly intimidated. But Dad used to always say to me, just walk in like you own the place, you know, don't just walk in there, you know, like you're meant to be there. So I guess Dad, you could tell, you know, oh, I should have maybe let her do what she wanted to do initially, but I probably wouldn't have ended up where I am now, running my own business, building the houses, because I probably would have been actually not living with, I would have been working in an office in the city and probably would still be sitting in an office in the city. So it sort of brought it to full circle, but it took, you know, probably 15 years longer than what it took if I'd done that straight out of university. So that's sort of how I got
route, huh?
Yeah. But probably ended up in a better space because I have my own business, and I have, you know, I wouldn't have had that if I didn't do it the roundabout way that I did it.
Yes. So let's talk about, given that the industry that you are in, being the building industry, is a predominantly male oriented industry, how have you found your way in that, and how have you established yourself as being a really influential woman in that space?
So it's been very difficult. I'm lucky I have a really supportive husband, and he, I guess, in situations where we would be dealing with tradesmen or clients, I mean, even clients are just as difficult because, you know, they want to speak to the builder. They can't see that a woman could actually have any input into what they're building or know anything about that. But so he would always sort of pass off to me, and if it was a question that he knew that I could answer, he would say, oh, that's Angie's department, she does all that. So I had that support from him to I guess push me into it. Not that I needed pushing, I wanted to be in there, but make people sort of take that, not just assume that it's the husband or the builder that knows everything. When we're at the building awards, I actually go up on stage and take the awards, whereas most of it's mostly the men that sort of go up. So he sees that as he wants women to be in the industry, because he says he can't do the job without me. And I know that, and probably every woman out there knows that, you know, a lot of building businesses are, you know, talked about dodgy builders and, you know, their paperwork's bad. There's always constant, you know, disputes, and it's a bad industry because the women aren't necessarily stepping up and stepping into a role to help make the industry better by providing that background and the support of, you know, making sure that contracts are actually done. You'd be surprised how many builders don't bill with contracts, or their documentation is next to nothing, and then clients wonder why did we get into an argument with the builder? Because it's the builder that hasn't necessarily provided all that information. So he says to me, I don't know how builders actually work without their wives helping them, or a significant partner, because he knows that he can't fill that whole role of what's such a massive job to undertake when you build someone's home.
What's interesting about that, Ange, is that even though, you know, whenever we're running any business, there's the front piece of it, right? And then there's a big chunk of it. It's like the iceberg. You say the tip of the iceberg is the house being built, and then everything else that actually makes the business run and operate as a well-oiled machine is actually sitting beneath the surface. And that's obviously where a lot of the time from a, if I relate this to the She-Myth book, but like the woman taking what's seen in that industry as a secondary role, being the administration or the person behind the scenes, when in fact that's the biggest chunk of what actually makes that business, work as well as it possibly should. And often, as far as the She-Myth book is concerned, we talk about that a lot, because it's about then bringing or recognizing that it is, it's an even playing field, that what your husband does on the, the exterior, actually physically building the house, is equally as important as what you're doing behind the scenes to make sure that everything is operating at in peak performance, that from a compliance point of view, you are complying with legislation, that your customers are being taken care of, etc., etc. What sort of things, and I know you're very instrumental in the industry and in terms of being part of, like the Builders Association, what sort of things are actually happening in that industry now to recognise the worth that women or the significant partners, whether that be a business partner or a wife, are doing to actually to improve the perception of them?
Yeah. So I sit on the Queensland Master Builders Housing Board, and also on the Contract Committee Board for the state of Queensland. And I mean, there is a lot of work. They are trying to get more women into the industry. There's a lot they're trying to get apprenticeships, for girls to come in as carpenters or electricians or whatever. So there is a push towards that. I still think that the role of the back office stuff is not recognised enough, and I think it's because us, the women, are not stepping up into that role and saying we are here behind the scenes. I mean, just even the dialogue in Facebook groups, it's always like, it's my husband's business. It's my husband's business. I'm just doing the books while I'm looking after the kids, or I'm just doing this. So I think we need to actually stand up and say, we are a big part of this business, and we are a huge part of the business. Like you said, that the house is being built by the guys, and women can obviously build the house as well. But most of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes is not seen and not recognised and not appreciated by the general public. There's a lot of regulation that goes into the industry and this is why builders do go broke, because they just haven't got necessarily all the help, or they're not implementing the stuff that they need to keep themselves within those regulations, and to make sure that they've got enough money within their business and the money's coming in on time. Like, that's all the stuff that we do, and we just need to be recognised as, not just the builder. There's so much more that goes into the building, and the building is the finished product. That's the dream of the person. That's what they come to us for, is that end product. But there's just so much that goes on underneath, like that you said, underneath the iceberg, that people just have absolutely no idea. And I think that needs to be more brought out into the public as to, one, what, like, the round of regulations that we have to comply with is, you probably wouldn't believe, like, we can get $14,000 fines for not sending someone a piece of paper because they sent us an invoice. Like, it actually constricts a lot of the industry as well. So I'm all about trying to get the girls to come out of that shadow and say, I am here, and I have a big contribution to this business.
And you make a really good point there, because, in thinking about, well, what is the change that we can actually make? It actually does start with us. And so we're the languaging that we're using, as in, you hear a lot, I just do the books, or you mentioned, I'm helping my husband out with his business. When we start to identify ourselves as being a big part of that business and an instrumental piece in the puzzle, then we can step up and say, well, actually, it's I am the business owner, instead of waiting, sitting back. And this is often in the She Myth book, we talk about this too. We often sit back and we're waiting for somebody to say, hey, come on up here, come on up here and be, be the owner, be the face of this business, instead of actually stepping forward and saying, this is me, I am the owner. And I know you've got a bit of a story that you're going to tell about some clients that you had this particular situation with.
So within your book in the She Myth, and I'll just read this because it so actually is exactly what you were just talking about. So it says, rarely do we find the support you need because you are usually the support person. Therefore, you must learn to create and put a support system in place for yourself that allows you to stand up and lead. This is so important to understand because most women have been trained to be in the supporting roles and not the leading roles. If a woman strikes up a business with her husband, that's okay because she's supporting her husband. But if she wants to strike out on her own, that's a completely different conversation. So when we started our business, I think I was the one pushing my husband because I wanted to design houses. I wanted to take photo of houses. I loved photos of houses, like all my marketing, or I'd take all the photos. People always say, I'm not, like, who's done your photos? Oh, I did the photos. And they're like, oh, wow, like how, But I had one client ring up. I answered the phone and he said, he wanted to speak to the builder. And I said, you can speak to me. And he kept pushing, no, I want to speak to the builder. And I said, no, you can speak to me. And then he says, and who are you? And I said, and he says, what's your qualifications? And I said, what, like, do you want me to tell you what degree I've got? Like, I was sort of, I guess, being a bit of a smart ass because he was being a bit smart to me. So I said, well, I've actually got a degree in marine science. And you could tell he was a bit then baffled. Well, what's happening here? And eventually he said, well, can I speak to the business owner? I said, you're speaking to the business owner. And he went, oh, well, I thought I was just talking to the receptionist. So they straight away have got this mentality of, you're just the girl that's answered the phone. You couldn't possibly talk to me about how I wanted to build my house or what the situation was. And so this client actually then came in to see us and came in, sat down with me and my husband, and he kept sort of making funny like head movements and trying to indicate to my husband something's, and my husband said, what's wrong? And he said, I don't want to speak about money in front of your wife. And my husband looked at him and he said, oh, well, she does all the money. So if you can't talk to her about money, you may as well walk out the door. And he left because he had a limiting belief, obviously, of, you don't talk to women about the money, or it's not none of my business to know all that. And he sort of just said to him, mate, she does all that. I just build the house. Like, if you can't have those conversations with her, then this isn't going to work. You need to sort of walk away. So, yeah, it's just, you just got to get up and be out there and just say, this is me and this is my business and this is what I do for the business. And I'll clearly say, if someone says to me, what's the detail of that building thing? I'll say, that's not my department. I have no idea. I just make it look pretty and I keep the business running. Any technical information, you need to speak to my husband. But if you're not going to step out from that, this is my husband's business, or I'm only just helping do these things, it's going to be hard for people coming into the industry.
Absolutely. I've just got a couple of, I'm going to pop these up on the screen actually, Ange, because Karen Saxepley is saying, well, Ange, what you've just said is profound, and it was. And then we've also got here, MJ is saying, Ange certainly did not hang on to the limiting beliefs that she was fed as a young person. And that obviously has been really beneficial for you, even though, you sort of took a different route to getting to where you are today. It's, it has worked out, but you didn't hang on to those self-limiting beliefs that, maybe this isn't the right industry for you, and then having constant, it's got battle she myths thrown at you constantly in that particular industry. You've taken the route of, I'm going to own this. I'm stepping up. That is my identity. I'm the business owner, and you've run with that. And that has been, I would say that would be one of the biggest reasons that you have carried on to be as successful as you have been in that industry, and being on the number of boards that you're on and the awards that come with. Because all of a sudden, what's interesting about this too is, and hats off to your husband, Ross, who's obviously been extremely supportive in this and been a champion for you, but has really differentiated your business because you're not the norm. You've got to, all of a sudden, like you mentioned earlier, you go to the awards, and it's usually the men that are up there collecting the awards on behalf of the business. In your case, you're up there with the guys collecting the awards. And so all of a sudden, that's amazing, because that clearly differentiates you from the rest of the pack.
Don't tell anyone. It's a secret. But it's just marketing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because every builder in a tuxedo looks the same as the other builder. So people will recognize me and know exactly who I am. And that doesn't come easy for me either. Like, I mean, even at the awards, and my friend came with me one year, and I said, watch this. And we were standing outside the entrance from the awards, and people were leaving for the night, and I was saying hi or see you later, and even some of the women would just turn the other way. They didn't want to acknowledge me. And yes, okay, I'm in their competition, but it's not just from the men, it's also from the women that sort of, I don't know, I guess maybe they maybe they want to do that. Maybe they do want to step out, but they just don't know how. But they just have to, own it and step up. Like you said, no one's going to invite you to the table. You've just got to go to the table yourself. So just get up and do it.
Well said, Ange, and that is exactly right. And it's marketing, but it's about everything that we do. I mean, if you were trying to market your business, you're not going to market your business in a way that's going to bring up all the things that are wrong. And you're not thinking about what's wrong with me or what's wrong with my business. So it's the same way when you're stepping up to the table, or when you're working through these self-limiting beliefs, because that's essentially what you're doing. You're marketing to yourself over and over and over again in your head and reinforcing the negativity. And so you want to think about everything from the lens of being a marketer, which I think is a really good point you make. You want to think about it from that perspective, because if you were marketing yourself, how would you go about doing that? Well, you would be talking about all the good things about you and how you can make a difference to somebody else's life. And so that is the narrative, and that is the record that you want to continue to play, whether it be outside verbally or internally inside of your mind. And that makes a fundamental difference to the way in which we don't wait to be invited to be at the table. We just step up and sit at the table.
Yeah. And that's, you just have to do that. I mean, I'm coaching other women in the building industry that do, hide behind their husbands to come out from there and show that, yes, they are worthy, and that the husbands will actually take them on board and go, gee, you've made my life so much better by actually being here and supporting that family business than what they struggle through. Because there's a lot of suicide in the industry. And I think a lot of it is because, they do feel like they're on their own, and they don't know. They love building. They don't want to do paperwork. They don't have time to do paperwork. They're out there building all day. The last thing they want to do is come home and sit in front of a computer for hours on end. So it does affect a lot of family life, and it does affect families in a big way. And we can come out and we can change that, and we can make a big difference in the industry by helping in that industry.
Well, thank you so much for your insights and your wisdom in your industry, Ange, because clearly you are a woman who has navigated that world very, very well. And now the fact that you are out coaching and teaching other women or empowering them to come out of their shell and actually take a place at the table where they belong, is how we're going to start making a real change and a difference to this. And when we also start to champion one another instead of looking at one another from a place of competition, that we can actually help one another to rise together. So thank you very much for sharing your stories today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Before we leave, I want to ask you this. If you were to give other women, whether they be in the building industry or just women in general, a piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be? Or a message for that matter?
My daughter's just creeping out the door. But one thing I say to her is just to never give up. I mean, she's in gymnastics and she's quite high up in it, and she sees a lot of girls give up. And one day she finally said to me, and I was like, it's getting through to her. She said, Mum, but us Scots don't give up. And yeah, even like I said, my dad said to me, just walk in like you own the place, which I don't walk in like I've owned the place. I walk in with confidence, and I sit and assess. So a lot of it is taking in your environment, sort of, I guess, working out who thinks they stand above you or not above you. Like it's very much, especially in the male-dominated area, sort of just going around the room and going, okay, well, who has what interpretation of me, and what do I need to, I guess, get them to change or have a different perception of me than what they currently do, which does take a while, but you usually find, I mean, when I first started on the building board, it did take a while before I knew everything that was happening, what was happening in that room, for me to then obviously be confident enough to speak and then go, okay, she does know what she's talking about. So yeah, just don't give up and just keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great use of emotional intelligence and just, good discernment, and then navigating, well, where do I go from here? So thank you very much, Ange. And that's great pieces of advice. Just don't give up, follow your dreams. As somebody else said here, is, when you've got a dream, you just want to continue to follow that, and don't let other people take you off course, even though sometimes that course, might still get you there, but you still had your eyes clearly set on the dream of being in that industry, and you got there. So well done.
To the women in the industry, we all have come from somewhere else. Like we've all been hairdresser or a beauty therapist, and you can learn to be in the industry. You don't just sort of, I guess, sit in the back and go, but I don't know how to do that because I'm a hairdresser. Like you've got to own that identity and then make that work and find the help that you need to make it work, because it's out there.
Absolutely. Well, you and your team who coach other women in the industry would be a great resource to go to if they need some additional help. So on that note, if there is anybody in the industry that is watching right now, what is the best place that they may be able to get in contact with you, Ange? They just connect with you on Facebook?
Yeah, so design her builder. So design with a HER on the end, builder, is my Facebook page. Also, I've got a website, designerbuilder.com.au or just .com. And I will be starting a live show in the next couple of weeks, which will be, talking about business and helping women navigate through the journey within that building industry.
Well, that sounds awesome. And I know that, with your knowledge and skill that you have, you're going to get a big viewership on watching your show. So thank you so much for being here today. Guys, if you haven't already got yourself a copy of the She Myth book, then the place to go is just below here. Go to amazon.com or amazon.com.au. You can get yourself either the paperback version or the ebook version, whichever takes your fancy, and, have a bit of a read. And I'm sure that you will start to see the She Myths that have been playing out in your life, and that you'll be able to start shaking them off and building yourself with some discernment and some great skills, I'm going to say, tactics, techniques, strategies inside of that book that will help you to step up and take your place at the table. So get yourself a copy of the book, and we'll see you guys again. Given it's Friday here in Australia, we won't be back tomorrow. We'll be back again on my Monday, 10 at 8 a.m. actually. So 8 a.m. with another She Myth Eliminator story. But thank you, Angela, for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and we'll see you guys again sometime soon. Monday, in fact, is when I will see you. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.